In 1996, Gremlin Interactive and Interplay ported Loaded to the Sega Saturn. Shockingly, the port was overall fairly well done in regards to its technical presentation. It retained its exaggerated lighting engine, huge explosions, and the blood and gore was still on full display. It was a top-down run-and-gun where you must escape a complex prison facility using one of 6 convicts, each with their own weapons and attributes. It had moments of choppiness, but overall I really enjoyed it, and the 2-player mode made it even better. When the reviews came in for the sequel on the PlayStation later that year, things looked immediately bleak. Known as Re-Loaded, many publications blasted it as far worse than the original, paying particular attention to its repetitive gameplay. When Re-Loaded was announced for the Saturn in 1997, I knew the project was in trouble because it kept slipping dates. First it was early 1997, then a few months later, then a few months later, until gaming magazines didn't list it anymore at all. It was strange because the game was said to be virtually finished, yet no retail release was ever seen. What I didn't know at the time was there were actually a number of publicly released demo discs for Re-Loaded issued in the PAL regions. Known as the Gremlin Interactive Demo disc, it also had playable previews for Actual Soccer and Hardcore 4x4. It would be years before I was able to secure a copy of my own and finally play Re-Loaded for myself. And oh my, was it an embarrassment from the moment you took control. In this episode, we will look at the demo disc it came on and how it looked next to the PlayStation original. The Gremlin Interactive Demo disc is actually the second release of its kind. The first one came out in 1996 with Loaded, Actual Golf, and Euro 96 Soccer. The playable level from Loaded showed us a game that was fairly far along in development, if not completely finished. It gave you a great idea of what the final product would be. The second Gremlin Interactive Demo disc we received was released in 1997 and came with Re-Loaded, Actual Soccer Club Edition, and Hardcore 4x4. Before we get into Re-Loaded, let's take a quick look at the other 2 games. Actual Soccer is something I've never played before on the old Saturn, mostly because I'm not much of a soccer fan, but also because it was never released in the United States. I thought it was okay. The graphics engine is not especially impressive. The players look kinda janky and the performance seems to struggle to keep a solid frame rate. It played decent enough and the interface was simple for the most part. You really only need to worry about 3 or 4 buttons for the majority of the moves, and the quick select to go to the player nearest the ball helps immensely. No doubt Worldwide 98 slaughters it, but I've played far worse. Hardcore 4x4 is an off-road racer that I just never could get into. The terrain has you bouncing all over the place and you never feel any true sense of speed. Thing is, the environments are sterile ravines, so there's no joy of mudslinging or fighting specific elements. It's just barren, bumpy rocks in every single level. This also looks like complete garbage on the Saturn. The polygon clipping, the up and down performance, the garish textures, they all are a real turnoff. Truck enthusiasts may get a kick out of it, but I feel most people will turn this off after a race or 2. That brings us to the topic of our feature and the demo, Re-Loaded. There's a number of places on the internet that claim the demo takes place on the very first stage, but in reality it's actually the 3rd level of the first world. This is a bunker-like area that has stationary cannons, loads of armed foot soldiers, and a number of satellites for you to hunt down and destroy. But it's clear from the start this demo was nowhere near ready for prime time. This thing is an alpha state at best, and it's almost unplayable even by 1997 standards. The performance is abysmal. You jump right into the demo playing as Butch, who moves like his legs are trapped in wet cement. To further compound this issue, he also slows down when he fires anyway, so the combo bogs the action down to the point where you seriously have to question why the developer thought this demo was worthy. But this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to its issues. The textures are funky, the lighting and transparencies are far worse than the first game, and the screen clearing bomb attack looks absolutely terrible. The entire thing can only be described as laughable. almost as if the developers were purposely looking to take a piss on the Saturn, showing it in a really bad light. But to truly understand how bad this is, we only need to put it side by side with the PlayStation original. Now I want to be clear that the PlayStation version itself ain't the best looking game, but just look at the disparity. The Saturn looks as if it's 2 generations behind the PlayStation. And yes, before you say it, this is a demo versus a retail release. But this is a demo of a supposedly almost finished title that Gremlin felt was good enough to release to the gaming public. This isn't some obscure work found on a hard drive 20 years later. That at least could be excusable if not outright understood. But for this to be presented as some kind of enticing preview is absolutely confounding. There's even a few gaming magazine editors out there that claim to have seen the final game and say it isn't much different than what's on display here. I won't mince words here, it's the worst demo I have ever seen officially released for any console ever. 1997 was a turbulent year for the Saturn and Sega in general. With Bernie Stolar declaring the Saturn wasn't the company's future, many projects that were planned and already in development were cancelled. Re-Loaded here had plenty of problems, but Gremlin obviously saw no future worth fixing it. Most developers were hanging on by a thread with their Saturn support in the first place, and once it was clear Sega would be dropping the Saturn sooner rather than later, I think most just wrapped up what they were doing or jumped ship completely. There are so many late release Saturn games that look unfinished. House of the Dead with its shockingly bad visuals. Symphony of the Night, a two-dimensional game the Saturn should have chewed up and sped out with ease, is a travesty. Even high-profile, big-budget titles like Burning Rangers seem to need a bit more polish to iron out the rough spots. If you ever get a chance to sit down and play the demo for Re-Loaded, I highly recommend that you do. Not because it's something you'll enjoy, but because you'll get a snapshot in time of just how bad things could be on Sega's 5th generation entry. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.